The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, of Phoenix Suns podcast. Sam,
Mike,
they fell into the trap.
I am sad. I am contractually obliged to be here.
Sort of.
That's just kidding. We don't have contracts, the two of us. But I am still sad. We are recording fresh off, and this is my fault. Literally fresh off a loss against the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah.
Mike asked me a couple of days ago if I wanted to record Sunday night or Monday night. I said, it is Monday night, right? Yeah. I said, let's do Monday night because if they win, that was not me promising anything, but just thinking if they win, the good vibes carrying into what would be a podcast where they had just gone 4-0 over the past week. We could talk about it. We could have a good time. Instead, disaster strikes, and now here we are having to record a podcast. I'm sorry, Mike, and I'm sorry, listeners.
Every once in a while, we'll get questions about us, sort of, and the podcast in general. And some people ask, like, what is the hardest part? And it's the consistency. That's the hardest part. Because that means you have to record days like today. And I always say this. The people like PHNX or Locked On that do either daily or podcasts after every game, those guys work hard. They work hard because that is not fun. And sometimes you got to do it. And this is a game I think we have to talk about because the Suns lost to the Spurs without Victor Wembanyama in a game that people online are already calling the worst loss of the season. I think you could make a list of a few of them. And I would say
there are definitely a handful of candidates.
Every Spurs loss, which now there are 3, are on that list. All 3 of them. And yeah, it's just for whatever reason, the Suns could not beat the Spurs again. And look, in a game where KD was sensational shooting for the majority of the game, where Booker had really great stretches shooting as well, but some really bad turnovers. And really, I think the headliner of this game was probably a Jusuf Nurkic injury where he rolled his ankle right before the toughest stretch of the season, not to mention what looked like a Bradley Beal finger dislocation right towards the end of the game as well. The Suns were in it. They had a chance to win. Didn't win. Yeah, on his shooting hand.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, well, God, you gave me so many fun choices. Let's see. Well, look, KD and Book had good games. It's unfortunate to put KD in a situation like tonight where he shoots 12 for 17 from the field. He shoots 4 for 6 from deep. You know, we've been begging him to take more threes off the catch, contested, even with a hand in his face. He was doing it tonight, and he was making those shots. One of the very final shots of the fourth quarter, I think, was one of those shots that he missed. But then the Suns got 2 opportunities on the last possession, missed them both. So it just, sometimes that happens. And then with Book, he had a strong first quarter, and he had a really strong fourth quarter. But in between those turnovers that you're talking about, just some really stupid passes on his part, lazy stuff, lazy nonsense that once again we have a game. I mean, 28 assists to 14 turnovers tonight. It's not the end of the world. It's actually 2-1 is a pretty good ratio as a team, but it's just wrong turnovers at the wrong time. And then especially I was complaining about this on the playback that we did tonight. When you contrast that with the Spurs, this inexperienced team without its best player that doesn't have a real point guard, that needs to rely on Devin Vassell being their number 1 and Jeremy Sohan being their number 2 tonight, to only force that team to commit 7 turnovers just really hurts because you're just not giving yourself an opportunity to score the easy ones. The Suns needed more easy points in this game. They were trying to drive. They were trying to get calls. The officials made it very clear from an early stage in this game that they were not going to give Devin Booker those free throws that he sought. And so they needed another way to score easy points. that could have come through transition if they had forced more turnovers on the part of the Spurs, and it just never happened.
But by the way, looking at the box score, the Suns essentially lost. Look, the game was lost many times throughout this game, but they essentially lost on a Jeremy Sohan game winner. 1 for 7 from 3. His only make was the one that gave them the lead for good. Sohan had maybe his best game of his career. I wouldn't be surprised if
26
people were out there trying to make that case.
26 and 18, and his only 3 came with 90 seconds left. A dagger, dare I say, Mike, shades of Tim Duncan in 2008 against the Shaq Suns that was a first-round playoff series, and he hit a dagger 3 against us in one of those games. I can't remember which game it was anymore. Jeremy Sohan just had a Tim Duncan-esque play, and the legacy
it could be the game that knocks the Suns out of the playoffs too.
The legacy of the Spurs dicking us down continues, unfortunately. I have no words. I have no words for some of the dumb ass losses that this team has sustained this year, and how we're really going to look back on the season when we're in the 8th seed. If we even are in the 8th seed, I hope we are. The Rockets are coming for us at this point. But if we're in the 8th seed and we finished a game or two behind the Sacramento Kings and the Dallas Mavericks, and we're just thinking, how did we go 1-3 against the Spurs, the second worst team in the NBA? The third worst team in the NBA, I guess, actually. There's the Wizards and the Pistons.
Yeah.
Inexplicable.
Really,
some inexplicable stuff has happened with the Suns this season.
I was really excited to come on this podcast hoping there would be a win, of course, even if it was a close one. Like if the KD or Book made one of those threes at the end, that would have been great. And mention that we released more shirts, more merch, and the Suns really turned in the punch bowl for that one. But I'm going to say it now anyway. Ethicalhoops.com. Check it out. We got new shirts designed specifically after a famous tie-dye shirt from the Lithuania basketball team in 1992. Random, I know, but a very cool shirt and a very cool tie-dye shirt. Check it out. Ethicalhoops.com. Plus some more stuff there.
I will say
that
not
was just released.
Not to push anyone to make a purchase or whatever. You guys, if you listen, that's enough in my book. I love all of you equally. But the cool thing about our designs that we've done kind of intentionally is they don't make reference to any current Suns players or current Suns teams. So
yes,
you're basically,
the
shirts say the timeline on them, and think of it as supporting us as much as you're supporting your Suns fandom. But again, kind of chose a bad time to release those. Check out the website if you're interested.
No easy way to transition out of that, but let's talk about the use of Nurkic injury because I think that is something that's going to be relevant to the upcoming schedule. The Suns, 10 games left in the season, 10 playoff teams that they're playing to end the season with. The next 2 games are against the Denver Nuggets and the OKC Thunder. Probably the 2 teams that are playing the best right now in the West, at the very least. Of course, the Nuggets up and down, but at any game they can just destroy you. And then OKC, who the Suns have yet to beat this season, back to back. Now, Nurkic has played well against the Denver Nuggets this season, as we know. He tends to play well against Jokic, but he was injured in this game, likely not playing. But I do want to start by talking about just how he's been playing lately, because although he's in a very important part for this team and has been very good for this team, and I think they will undoubtedly be significantly worse without him, he has struggled to make any layups lately, not to mention how much he's struggled from the free throw line. In this game, he played 19 minutes. He was 3 for 9 from the field. Every shot except one was at the rim. Every single one. And he missed them, 6 of them, and then 0 for 2 from the free throw line. Still, had an overall impactful game, 6 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks in that time. Still playing well, I think, overall. But there's just been a stretch for him recently where I think it's a combination probably of his thumb injury on his left hand. Maybe the fact that he's fasting has an impact on him. I really don't know. That's one of those things where unless he tells you, you don't know. So we have no idea, but just really, really struggled to score at the rim lately.
Yeah, it's coming at the worst time, obviously, but this is a guy who has already persisted through so many injuries this season. if the Suns were actually taking care of business like we wanted, and they were, say, I don't know, the second or third seed right now, and a handful of games ahead of where they actually are in the standings, then I would be tempted to say, here's where you rest the guy a little bit. And you give him 2 or 3 games off that he clearly needs, between the fasting and the thumb injury and the ankle and so many other little issues that he's having. He just needs the time. Unfortunately, I mean, now we're waiting in the wings to see how long he actually might miss with this sprained ankle. I'm dreading that matchup against Denver, against Wednesday, obviously, and seeing what Jokic might do to poor Drew Eubanks, who we need to talk about extensively. Drew Eubanks in this game, I think, too. Maybe not even Drew Eubanks, but just Frank Vogel's decisions around Drew Eubanks. It's tough. It's just really tough for Nurk right now. Obviously, the reason he's so important to this team is because when he's not out there, yes, I recognize, Mike, that he's not the finisher we want him to be, but it's more so just the fact that the offense, and I know you know this, the offense just fundamentally changes so much when you drop off from Nurkic to Eubanks. Maybe you can run the same sets with Thad that you could run with Nurkic, but Frank doesn't want to play Thad, and maybe Thad sucks. We don't know. He's played a total of like 15 minutes. So if you want to play Eubanks, then it becomes a lot more high screen and roll, and you just can't hit the cutters with Eubanks in the same way that you can with Nurkic, and you just can't trust Eubanks to set the same screens kind of in like as parts of compound sets without being called for moving screen offensive fouls. And there's all sorts of little stuff that Eubanks just can't nail. He just can't do the details the way that Nurkic does the details. It's really going to be felt over the next week, maybe, if the Suns are without Nurk, short term or medium term.
An important point on that I just want to double down and really dive into a little bit more is it's not that the offense gets worse when Nurkic is on the floor in the same way. I'm sorry, when Nurkic is off the floor, in that they're running the same plays and they just have a worse outcome. It's that you have to run different sets when Nurkic is off the floor because Nurkic's skill set is so unique to the Suns that you're able to run different types of plays with him on the floor. You can run a lot of the same stuff with Eubanks, but the options out of those plays become drastically limited. The screens are worse. He's not capable of making the same types of passes and reads. And, of course, you can just feed him in the post and just run offense out of that post-up when Nurkic is on the floor. Switch it over to Eubanks. As you said, a lot more screen and roll. In this game, he had 4 assists. I'm guessing almost all of those, Eubanks did, were just sort of handoff assists. What we call fake assists often. When we're referring to those, they're still assists, but they're not really creating other than just being a big body. I mean, now, I want to say, though, Eubanks has been playing well lately. By his standards, of course, I want to keep that clear.
He had multiple games with 3 blocks this week.
Yes, he had multiple games with 3 blocks in the last week. They're 3-1 in their last 4. I don't want to lose, the forest for the trees, as they say, but they have won games that they're supposed to win outside of this one game that we happen to choose to record afterwards. So they have been winning games, and part of that was due to Drew Eubanks playing well. In fact, I would say they had one of their best bench performances of the season just 2 games ago, and we're watching them, capable of doing that. So while Drew Eubanks has been playing well, and it's a good time for him to sort of step into the starting lineup in that his defense has been much better recently, the offense is going to struggle. And by the way, this is another thing we can talk about. The offense is struggling anyway, even with Nurkic, and part of that is his finishing lately. But every game of the last, even the win streak, the little 3-game win streak that they had, every game to start the game, it feels like they can't score in the first 5 minutes of the game. And that's been a problem for this team, too. Do you have any theories on why they've been struggling in the first few minutes offensively of these games?
First few minutes, I think it's mental. I know that's basically your theory too, but I can't think of another reason why. Book has been trying. Book has really been the guy who's carrying the offense in the first quarter lately, and then KD's been quite quiet. He has not been. Tonight was just another example of it. I don't think he took a shot attempt until
the second quarter, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe he had one, right? But like he eventually got going. He eventually got his 30 points, and they were an efficient 30 points too. But not really much of an effort to get KD going early in the games. So I don't know. Do you have any theories on it?
I think that I think they've been trusting Nurkic to shoot a little bit too much. I think that's part of it. And maybe that's kind of the defense giving that to him, because I do think there was a strategy by the Spurs today to kind of force it to Nurkic at the rim and then try to contest as best as possible once he gets it, meaning sending another guy at Durant, sending another guy at Booker or Beal, and trusting that Nurkic isn't fast enough to get it up on the rim that they can't get back and contest, which in this game they were capable of doing. And maybe that's part of it, a little too much Nurkic early. Whereas later in the game, you could see Nurkic checked in for the second time in this Spurs game, and there was a stretch where he just got back-to-back-to-back assists when the offense was really flowing and playing well. But that's kind of the only thing that comes to mind. I don't think I would like to go back and watch that.
It's funny, right? Kind of thinking about that strategy, thinking through it, because it's like drop defense, which has exploded in popularity over the past 10 years and become the thing that every team runs. Not all the time, but as part of their overall identity. Like the core tenet of drop defense is like no layups. We're not going to make it easy, right? We're not going to give up the layups. And then you have here the Spurs are like, you know what? Let's just double KD every time so that Yusuf Nurkic takes a layup, because we know that's a bad shot. Like it's like one of the only teams I could imagine where the personnel dictates that actually maybe the big man just taking a layup is a bad shot. It just happens to be the case for the Suns.
Which, by the way, I will say he had a very good stretch of finishing at the rim besides the last 2 weeks or so where he's really struggled. He had a really good stretch before that, and I think there's just, like I said, the combination of Ramadan and his thumb, or maybe there's a mental aspect of it too, a lack of focus at the rim, or trying to get fouled, because that's where I think he struggles a lot, or trying to get the ball up on the rim a little too fast. For whatever reason, he's been missing that. I do have, just to transition a little bit more to Bradley Beal, I do have some good news from Dwayne Rankin. Oh. There were x-rays on Bradley Beal's hand. It was his shooting hand, ring finger, and it was negative in that it's not broken. So that's good news, at least so far.
That's great news. However, I'm not trying to doom, I promise. I'm certain that that's still very painful for Brad.
And very painful. It's going to probably affect his shooting, yes.
Very painful, and the ring finger is like uber important to your shooting. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't think there's any finger that isn't important on your shooting hands. I guess maybe you could do without your pinky. Gerald Green shot pretty well for a guy with 4.5 fingers.
Yeah, that was his ring finger.
Oh, that is his ring finger.
Maybe he should cut it in half, yeah.
Yeah, well, now we're really getting somewhere on today's pod. Okay. That was his ring finger? Really?
Yeah, it was.
Huh. All right, I guess we're going to test that theory. Well, in any case, good news for Brad so far. Has Dwayne said anything about Nurk yet?
Nothing yet that I see. Shout out Dwayne Rankin, by the way. Goes to the away games. We get everything comes from him. He also said that Frank Vogel said it's unacceptable to lose that game, which, I mean, he's right. You can say that after a lot of games this season, as we mentioned earlier, and this is one of those ones where it is unacceptable, I think, to lose this one. But the good news is Bradley Beal could be, he probably will play, I'm guessing, in the next few games in this tough stretch that the Suns have based on the injury that we're seeing it so far. Of course, they have to always double check with finger injuries that there's no sort of ligament damage or anything like that. I'm sure they will check that and see what he's capable of doing over the next few games. But like I said, the next two alone, Denver and OKC, we need him.
Can we talk more about kind of the big man rotation as it currently stands for the Suns? This specific game, I want to just bring up two guys because I want to make sure we hit on those two guys.
Sure.
Number one, this is the lesser one. Bol played 8 minutes tonight, was a -10. The worst stretch of the game that I think you could just say lost the Suns the game was with Bol at center.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. I'm not throwing Bol entirely under the bus there, Mike, because I think there's a bunch of things that happened during those minutes, and it wasn't just like it kind of just happened to be while he was on the court, but it also kind of made sense that it was happening while he was on the court. So let's talk about that because I think it's something that a lot of fans have been asking for, and even us at times have been saying, why doesn't Bol just play a little bit at center? And it's not something that Vogel has done very much of. What did you think This is softball, but what did you think of Bol Bol at center tonight in his 4 or 5 minutes?
Okay, so a couple of thoughts on this. One, I think the last few games in general, there's a lot of people that are really worried about Bol Bol signing a big contract somewhere else. To me, it sort of feels like the fear that Suns fans had of losing Josh Okogie last year. Do you know what I mean?
No, I totally feel that. Yeah,
I'm not sure that they've done. I'm not sure Bol Bol has done enough to sign a big contract somewhere else. I'm not. Sure
I could see him getting more than a minimum, and so
I'm
if
not sure
all the
he
Suns,
has. That's all. Yeah.
If all the Suns have to compete with is they can give him a minimum and he can get $5 million on some crap team, I could see that happening. But he's not signing a big contract no matter what.
But here's what I mean, because I think the context of this comment matters, and I think you already understand where I'm going with this. But the extent to which Bol Bol's success has been due to severely limiting his role on the Suns has shown in the past few games. Now, in this one, putting him at center, when you're at center, the defense revolves around what you're doing. And if you're making mistakes, the team is making mistakes defensively. And that was happening pretty dramatically in this game. He had to be in the right place at the right time consistently to make a difference, and he wasn't in this game. What they do to maximize him, and what they've done well in maximizing him on this team, was putting him at power forward, putting him on, ideally, the worst shooter on the team so that he's able to roam. He's able to get in the paint and help. He's able to steal rebounds on the weak side if nobody's crashing in. He's able to tip it or get those weak side blocks, those kinds of things. And then offensively, on the other side of that,
making threes.
Making threes, yeah.
He shot really well from three since the All-Star break, and that's kind of one of the critical defenses. I mean, I think he's figured stuff out defensively over the course of the season too, as he's learned to play with guys, but also just, beginning of the season, we weren't sure if we could trust Bol to play a power forward. We knew he had great touch. He's always had great touch, but can you make a three? Now, guys are continuing to kind of not make an attempt to contest his threes, but he's proving them wrong. He's shooting like 40% from deep in the past 10 games or so. So he's doing exactly what needs to be done for him to survive at power forward. That doesn't mean he can survive at center. He's not proving right now that he can.
The Suns have essentially told him, you're not allowed to dribble. You're kind of not allowed to pass unless it's the easy pass. If you catch the ball, you shoot if you're behind the three-point line. You shoot a layup if you're going towards the rim. If you need to dribble, it's one or two, and then you're putting it up. You're shooting it, essentially. And that's why he's been so successful on this team, because when you strip away the stuff that can lead to significant mistakes, putting him at center, not letting him dribble, not expecting him to make any advanced reads on his passes, that's what makes him successful. And what that means is, in order for him to be extra successful, he has to be on a great team. You put him on a bad team where he's expected to do more, where he's expected to dribble, where he's expected to make advanced reads, where he's expected to play center a little bit more, for example. That's where he's going to make mistakes. And that means that in his market, if you're trying to figure out what he's going to be as a free agent, and forgive me, skipping to the offseason already, if you have a bad team thinking they can get more out of Bol Bol, yeah, all it takes is one. That's really all it takes. So, maybe one team will say, we'll get him. Maybe it's the Spurs. Maybe they put him next to Wemby and they're just trying to have the largest front court you've ever seen. Actually, that makes a lot of sense now that I say it out loud. But to me, he's maximized on a great team and he's minimized on a bad team, at least the way he's played so far. And that means the market for him will likely be smaller contracts. I doubt a team's going to use their tax-paying mid-level exception or their mid-level exception on him. I think it's more likely going to be a minimum. And it's not to say he hasn't played well. I don't want any of this to be construed as saying that he's been bad this season, because he hasn't. And I think a lot of that credit goes to him and his willingness to change, and a lot of that credit goes to the Suns and their coaching staff to actually get the most out of him. But what we're looking at right now is a situation potentially without Nurkic where you play some of the best teams in the NBA. There are really, to me, at center, three options. There's Eubanks, who will start, I think. There's Thad Young, who we have yet to see play actual important minutes for this team.
He's played two games against the Rockets where he was actually in the rotation, and a couple minutes against
Garbage time.
Who was that?
The
Philly?
Spurs, I think. Yeah.
Was it the Spurs? Was it Philly?
Yeah.
I can't remember anymore. Yep.
And the
Garbage
third
time.
option is KD at center. It's not Bol Bol at center. You know, that's I think what we're looking at. There might be a scenario where it works, but it's not. It's going to be really tough against good teams with Bol Bol at center.
To that end, and speaking of guys who are on minimum contracts and playing like they deserve to be on minimum contracts, the other guy, I know we already talked about Eubanks a little bit in this episode, but I just want to bring his name up again because why Drew Eubanks played 21 minutes in this game. Drew Eubanks actually led the Suns. He had a team high +7, plus minus. So I want to give some credit to him, first of all. However, the Suns waited until what? 4 minutes left? 3 minutes left to go to check Royce O'Neal back in to the game? And...
Well, it was Eric Gordon first.
Or it was Eric Gordon. No, it was Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen. Yeah, Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, and the starters. They waited way too long to pull Drew Eubanks out of this fourth quarter. Way too long. What is with Frank's fascination? Is it just like he saw the box score and he was like, yeah, you know, we had a good run with Drew early in the game and we have to continue to roll with that? Or was there any other like reasonable reason why you wouldn't just go to KD at the 5 earlier? Because as soon as it happened, the Suns went on a run and they were back in the game. And they were even leading the game at one point for a very brief moment. And this was in spite of all the adversity they were working against, the fact that Brad was on the bench, the fact that the Spurs got Nurkic is out. Well, yeah, obviously, but like they're you know, small ball team anyway at that point. But like Brad is on the bench. The Spurs got into the bonus with like half the quarter left. Meanwhile, the Suns couldn't get a whistle. Like I think there was definitely, you know, you were battling the officials a little bit tonight. And in spite of all that, they were making a run. Why did it take so long to go to KD at the 5?
Yeah, it's bizarre. No, I mean, it's to me, it's kind of inexcusable. You know, this is one of the games that we were watching on playback. So there are times, I think, where it's easy to go back and say this and this and this should have changed, you know, because you're looking at it in hindsight. But in real time, we were begging for it. In real time, we were saying, the Spurs went small before the Suns. You know, they were already playing small. They were begging the Suns to do it, and the Suns were having, you know, trouble generating any offense. And, you know, I don't like to go at coaches a lot, but to me, massive coaching mistake by Frank Vogel in this one. In an easily winnable game, if you just go to the small ball 5 with 5-6 minutes left in the game instead of with 3 minutes left in the game. And at that point, you have all the space you need. They have no rim protection, and you have shooters surrounding the players that are doing a pretty good job of getting to the rim in this game without Victor Wembanyama. This was a perfect opportunity to do it.
In a game,
and they didn't do it.
In a game, again, where you're not getting any whistles. Like, you just know you're not. And also, you shot
for all intents and purposes, this is a playoff game.
You shot
this is
57% from the free throw line. And you can't get a fucking whistle to begin with. So, like, what? At a certain point, you just have to embrace all of the spacing you have and just take the shots. Take the shots and live or die with that. But it was just bizarre that they didn't think of it until there were like 3 minutes left.
And here's the thing I will say. I think that it makes sense to not want to play a lot of KD at center throughout the regular season. Save it for the playoffs. We're lucky that he's been as healthy as he's been so far this season. Save it for the playoffs, right? I understand that. Like I said, for all intents and purposes, this is a playoff game. This is it. This is it. The Suns have to win in order to stay in the playoffs. Otherwise, they're in the play-in, and they're potentially playing against the Lakers team that'll shoot 40 more free throws than them.
Yep.
Or a one game, against the Mavs, where Luka Doncic has already done what he's done to the Suns so far. Or, another worst case scenario, it's the Golden State Warriors, or it's the Houston Rockets, the hottest team in the league. You know, these are not teams where everything is guaranteed, as we've seen for this team so far. So winning these games, these 4 games that were kind of easy, which they won 3. I don't want to lose sight of that again. They won 3, but winning these 4 has been vital for them to actually have a chance, because right now they are the 6th seed. They were at the beginning of the night, at the very least. We'll see where they are at the end of the night. And 10 games against playoff teams. There's just no guarantee. We've seen if they go 500 there, then they're playing like they have throughout the season. If they go under 500 there, I don't think it's a surprise. They can play better, don't get me wrong, but they do have a lot against them in this case.
It really bums me out that here we are 72 games in and there's no matchup where they can go into it and I just feel secure. It just doesn't. There's a fundamental lack of faith with this team where we've talked about it before, but yes, I believe they can beat anyone, but winning a playoff series is different. It's just different, and it commands a certain level of discipline that we've not seen from them on a consistent basis. I'm looking here at the box score and also just laughing to myself because ESPN lists out the season series. So in addition to saying that San Antonio wins 3-1, which we already know.
The 16-win San Antonio Spurs, yeah.
Yeah. The Suns finished the season series with a plus 12 point differential and went 1-3 because they blew them out by 25 and then they lost 2 games, or they lost 1 game by 1 point. That was October 31st. They lost the next game by 11 points and they lost tonight by 2 points. Sadly, point differential is not how the standings are seeded. Maybe would have turned out a little bit differently for us. I'm not sure. There are some teams in the standings ahead of us with some suspect point differentials. I will say that. But you got to win games. You got to win close games.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I mean, think about how point differentials work, right? The 2 games the Suns just played, if they had the same point differential, but they won both games by 14 points instead of winning one by 28 and losing one by 2 or whatever it was.
Yep.
That point differential is the same, but they won one and they lost one. Can we just do a quick segment here where we just pretend like we recorded on Sunday and talk about what went well over the previous 3 games that they won?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Do you want to start?
Sure. Bradley Beal.
Okay.
Dishon. His passing in particular has been really incredible for the Suns. The ability for the Suns to generate offense off of his drives, but also for him, I think lately in how he's been playing and including this game, to cut his turnovers down while increasing his assists has been massive for the team because overall, and I know we're doing this after a game where they did struggle to take care of the ball, but overall, they cut those turnovers down in the last few wins. And a lot of that came on the back of Bradley Beal, who cut those turnovers down and increased his assists pretty dramatically, including 12 assists in the last game they played against the Spurs where they blew him out.
Yeah,
that was the first one that stood out to me.
In the month of March, I saw, not taking this game into account, but Bradley Beal going into this game was averaging 18 points, 6.6 assists per game in the month of March, which I said the other day was really the first time this season, if you look at his season splits month by month, that it feels like you're looking at a point guard's numbers. Like most of the rest of the time, it's like, yeah, he's averaging like 18 points and like 4 assists. You know, it feels there's a slight difference there, but it's the difference between really just feeling like you're looking at a shooting guard versus an actual point guard. It's not to say that Bradley Beal is now a pure point guard. He's not, a pass first Tyrese Halliburton. I don't even know how many pass first point guards are left in the league. So right. Tyrese is the first guy I thought of. I mean,
Chris Paul.
Paul. He's not Chris Paul. But he's doing enough between his driving, generating advantages for other guys, kicking out. He's absolutely been doing enough. And tonight was another example, 9.6 assists, just focusing on filling other guys' plates before, he fills his own. I think that's the way he needs to continue to play for this team when he's healthy. So I agree. Brad has been good. The first guy I thought of, can I give mine?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is actually Royce O'Neal. If I want to talk about someone who has not come up yet in this pod and I think has been good. Royce O'Neal's been good. This is part of my frustration, actually, again, with I was saying, why did Drew continue to play tonight in the fourth quarter? Because I'm like, Royce has shown us when he's on a capability to play 35 minutes and allow us to win the game. Now, it takes a special circumstance, like he needs to be making his shots. And of course, it helps when he can actually make a layup, but he's been making those recently, and a number of things need to be going right for him. But when he is playing up to the level that we expect from him, you can play him 30 minutes, you can play him 35 minutes, you can put him on the best offensive player on the other team. He's a better point of attack defender than Grayson Allen. He's not perfect, but he's better than Grayson Allen. So, yeah, I mean, Royce in the last week, going back to the Milwaukee game, he had 16 points, 3 assists in that game. Then he had 13 in 10 minutes against Philly. He had 14 points in 15 minutes against Atlanta. Kind of didn't really do anything in the first San Antonio game that was a blowout. But then again tonight, had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 5 of 6 shooting off the bench, 2 of 3 from deep. I don't have his 3-point percentages here over the past 5 or 10 games, but it feels like he's basically shooting, 50% from deep in the past couple weeks. So Royce has been good, and that continues to have been a good trade. I'm glad we made the Royce O'Neal trade at the deadline.
Yeah, I agree. He has been good. He has, as we've talked about, he is a guy that really, you just never know what you're going to get from him on a night-to-night basis, but you just hope for the best as far as his shooting goes. And yeah, he did a good job in the last few games, has done well defensively. And just one last one from me, and this is just an overall shout-out, but I'll include Eric Gordon in it in particular, but this is the bench. We had some games where the bench just played really well. I think back-to-back games for the Suns where they were like extra impactful. In particular, I think the Hawks game is where it started with Eric Gordon coming in and scoring 21 points and 5 assists, but follow that up with the Spurs blowout game where the Suns actually beat them. That I think the bench was huge in that game, in that the starters started out kind of badly and the bench came in and it just became a blowout so fast. And it was nice to see some games where the bench were a positive over that stretch. In fact, the 3 games before tonight's game, we're recording after the Spurs loss, of course, I think the Suns were averaging something like 41 points off the bench in those games. So pretty significant for the Suns, who struggled to get a lot of scoring off the bench so far this season. So that's the last one I got. You got anything else?
Out? There's been other positives, like overall Book and KD, and, I think they've all been fairly good. But it stands out. No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, Book got his shot back. I mean, he was pretty bad after the ankle injury.
Okay, that's
we
fair.
were worried about that.
Book being able to make a pull-up 3 again is important.
Yeah.
I do think I said, maybe it was on the Patreon pod, I said, look, we're not going to win a playoff game, let alone a playoff series, if Book can't make that shot.
Yeah.
And thankfully he found it again, so that's a good point.
Before we get to some voicemails that we're going to cover here, the whole Jontay Porter thing, I just feel like I want to mention it.
Okay, all right.
I just want to mention it real quick. In just that, the NBA has their first major gambling scandal now, in that, based on the evidence that the gambling companies and probably the NBA have acquired, it looks like there's a possibility of an NBA player sort of fixing his specific stat lines to ensure wins on his unders that players or people were betting. He's been asked to not join the team. Essentially, he's away from the team, and likely will, if they can prove any intent by him, be hit with a massive punishment, which I think could include some sort of statement by Adam Silver, which means maybe even some sort of like banning him for life or stripping him of his contract entirely.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Yeah, I think, this is an interesting case study because on the one hand, the NBA has been shoving gambling, and everyone, admittedly, you can't escape gambling ads.
Some of you might even have one on this podcast. Yeah,
of course. I recognize that. I do. So it's an important issue that the NBA really needs to look at and really needs to take seriously. On the other hand, this is Jontay Porter.
Yeah.
I wonder how many of you sitting at home knew who Jontay Porter was before we mentioned his name for the first time on the podcast today. And that's not calling any of you casuals. That's just saying Jontay Porter has played 500 minutes in the NBA in his career.
400 something. Yeah, less than 500, I believe.
Yeah. This is a nobody. He's the brother of Michael Porter Jr. That's true, but it's easy to come down on a nobody. If they ever get a bigger star, or like a star at all, who's wrapped up in these sorts of allegations and investigations, that's where it becomes more... you wonder if Silver would have the same conviction. And we will wait to see what the ruling is here. But yeah, I absolutely think it's an interesting thing to follow, Mike, just given how inescapable it all is right now. Like, they're talking about, gleefully talking about updating League Pass to where you can make in-app bets through
Live betting,
FanDuel or DraftKings. Yeah, live betting, but through League Pass, which just feels like, even one step closer to this kind of dangerous intermingling between the league product and gambling. To be clear, I have nothing against gambling. We do it from time to time, and I think all of you should have that right too. But we're seeing what some of the consequences can be.
This is a huge scandal. Don't get me wrong, but it is sort of the lower stakes of what this could be. As you're saying, it's not. First of all, it's not fixing games. In that he was just impacting his own stats. Does it have an overall impact on the game?
He was just saying, I'm going to get 0 rebounds instead of 1. Because also, who the hell is betting on Jonte Porter props?
Sickos, yeah.
You
People
need
with
rehab.
problems.
You need help.
Yeah. So,
you need medication.
Lower stakes from that case. Does it call into question the integrity of the game overall? Yeah, it still does. It absolutely still does. Worst case scenario for the league in general, a gambling scandal that affects a star. Yes, one. But I think what even worse than that, if the refs are involved in any sort of that's to me, that would be the type of scandal that would have a lasting 10, 15-year impact on the sport. And that's why it's important for them to really, really come down hard if they have any proof that this was it.
Is it really a stretch to say that this league, which has literally had officiating scandals before, could do it again in 2024 when gambling is even more pervasive? It's a question of when, not if.
Not if.
And honestly, we already know Scott Foster's been doing it for years. Someone just needs to dig up the dirt. Someone just needs to get the irrefutable proof on that man and get him out of the league. We know it's been happening, Scott. You can't hide from us forever.
And for the record, we have no proof. Don't sue us. We're just joking around here. Okay, let's switch over to some voicemails. We'll be right back to listen to a few. Four 420-420-6553 is our phone number. Call us anytime, day or night. Leave us a voicemail, preferably under about 30 seconds, and we'll try to get to as many as we can on the podcast, of course, as long as they're relevant. Sometimes we get a call 5 days before the podcast, and like 10 different things have happened since then, so sorry if we don't get to your voicemail for that reason. You ready, Sam?
Let's do it.
Hey, Mike and Sam. This is Hooper Fidel from the Discord. Wanted to know what you guys think the Suns' record needs to be in their last 10 games for you guys to really buy into them as a contender. Thanks.
Thank you, Hooper, from the Discord. 10 games left in the season for the Suns. And in fact, as I'm talking about that, let me see if I can get those last 10 games and just read
I've
them
got them
out.
up. I can read
perfect.
them.
Go ahead.
Okay, at Denver, at OKC, at New Orleans, home against the Cavs, home against the Timberwolves, home against the Pelicans, home against the Clippers, at Clippers, at Kings, at Timberwolves. Who's the easiest team on here? Maybe the Cavs, if
Cavs
Donovan
probably
Mitchell's not playing still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
New Orleans has been playing really well, and there's 2 games against them.
Yep.
The Clippers have been playing well, but not so well, and there's 2 games against them. But like still good, just not maybe contender good recently.
Yeah.
Kings could go either way. Timberwolves, 2 games against them could go either way. Honestly, I think, so here's the thing. The next 2 games against Denver and OKC are the 2 hardest ones here. Which maybe that's not very comforting, but it's slightly comforting to get those out of the way.
Yeah.
I think if they go 6-4, they're in good shape. What do you think?
I think they're in good shape if they go 6-4, but the question is, what would make you think they're a contender now? Which I think, to me, that's like 7-3 or 8-2.
I could believe that they're a contender if they go 6-4 and just line up with the perfect matchups. But I mean, it needs to be perfect. But yes, ideally they need to go 7-3 or better.
Like if they
which
go
is asking for a ton.
If they go 8-2, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good, right? That's like when you're like, okay, this is like a real contender now.
If they're going 8-2, you're starting to think like, oh, maybe we just got hot at the right time, and all a team ever needs to win a championship is just to get hot for like the right 6-week stretch, and maybe it's our turn. That's what I'm thinking if they go 8-2.
Now, You see, the thing is this team was built and put together in a way to try to compete at the highest level in the NBA playoffs. That's what they're trying to do, right? So the question is, does it work? And if they go 8-2 against these playoff teams, then you start to feel like it does work. You can start to write off some of the mistakes earlier in the season because the lack of playing together, the injuries, which of course they're still struggling through right now as we speak. But you can sort of write off some of those if it starts to click and they start to look good together at the end of the season and they win, 7 of these last 10 games against playoff teams. Then you start to feel a little bit better. If they go 6-4, that feels like that's something they can do right now. I feel like that's possible. If they go 5-5, then you don't feel great. And if they go under 500, then you're just hoping they get out of the play-in, right?
It's over.
Yeah.
You're just hoping they get out of the play-in. And look, we'll be there with them. I know not all of you will be. Most of you will be, I think. But we will cover this season until it ends. We were just talking about it on the playback, man. This season has felt like it's gone by really quick because of the injuries and because we've just never gotten that sustained run, I think, that we've been craving of success. Maybe that's going to hit now. Maybe it'll be in the last 10 games.
I like it.
Sure would be nice.
It definitely would be nice. I mean, if you could pick a time for it to happen, this would be it, right? This would be it. As far as, I thought I was out. They pulled me back in. That would be this last 10-game stretch. Here we go.
Hey, Mike and Sam, this is Cody. My dooming did not work. But a serious question. With so many injuries, are we worried that JJ and Ishbia are going to pull the trigger on the guys and not give them time to kind of form in terms of role players? Are they going to just try to swap guys out, the impatience of Ishbia? Or are they going to be like realizing, hey, this year was an anomaly, we need to give them next year to see? Guys, thanks.
Thank you, Cody, for the question.
Thanks, Cody. Yeah, and Cody seems to be asking, do you think JJ and Ishbia would trade Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, or Bradley Beal? That seems like what he's asking there, right?
Sort of, because we know, just given the realities of the second apron kicking in and where the Suns are, the chess moves that they can make with their role players, there's not so much they can do. They absolutely need. I mean, Grayson Allen deserves that extension. He's been awesome. Royce O'Neal, I think, is a guy that you should try really, really hard to extend. Nurk's been good. He's played most of the time. So it's what else can you really do except swap out the minimum contracts or have the big conversation about what do we do with the stars? Devin Booker, this is still his team. He's not going anywhere. Bradley Beal, maybe has no trade value.
No trade, clause. So
he has a no trade clause. He gets to decide, right? That's the bigger point. Is he gets to decide. So I don't think he's going anywhere. And so that leaves you with KD. Are they going to trade KD? No, I really don't think so. Not unless he wants to go.
Yeah,
if he wants to go, that's a different conversation. But otherwise, I think we're kind of locked into this core. And then we can make some minor alterations next year. Like I said, it's going to be harder. You can't, pool together. Aggregate, that's the word I'm looking for. You can't aggregate salaries in the same way. When it comes to salary matching, we know that you can't match over 100% of incoming salaries anymore. Previously, it was 110%. Even previously to that, it was 125%. So all the rules are changing. The walls are closing in on us. We do have a first-round pick, though. And so maybe we're gonna draft a guy 19th overall who is just gonna save us next year and be exactly the piece that we needed for everything to fall into its right place.
I think I agree with all of that. I think it's really the one thing I will say, the one caveat is, we really don't know what Ishbia is going to be like as an owner. Now we have a lot of evidence of what we think he's going to be like, which is aggressive and kind of nuts. In a good way, of course, I do think. But, failure, which this team, if they don't make the NBA Finals, it's a failure. It impacts different people in different ways. And people who tend to be successful in a lot of things they do in their life can sometimes overreact to failure. That's all I'll say. He's a rich billionaire and he might be crazy. So you never know what he's going to do if he fails, because this would be a failure. So who knows? All right, one last one here.
Mike and Sam, what's up? My name's JP. Quick question. How do you guys go and record all of your stuff? Like, what's your guys' process with that? You guys meet up a little bit beforehand and know what you're going to talk about? How do you plan it out? And how does all the editing go and whatnot? Not your typical question, not really basketball related, but been listening for a while, so I was just curious how you guys do that. Hey, thank you guys so much, and go Suns.
JP, thank you for that question. And anyone who's not interested in the answer to this question, if you're only here for the basketball stuff, let me just plug ethicalhoops.com again one more time. But we can still answer this one. What were you going to say, Sam?
Truly leaving the inside baseball for last. I like that. Thank you for the question, JP. Where do we start? How do we go and record all of our stuff? Obviously, I don't live in Phoenix. I think you probably know that. So
he might not. Just as a clarification, some people, somebody told me recently that every podcast episode is somebody's first, and I'll tell you this: I never treat it like that, and I probably should remember.
That's true. That's a hard thing to remember sometimes. So we record remotely using a program called Cast.
Yes, Sam lives all the way in New York. I live right next to the arena in Phoenix, so we do have to do everything over the internet. We do it all online.
We do it all over the internet. That has bit us in the buttocks on occasion when, someone has a Wi-Fi issue and is dropping out, or it happens when you record remotely. But we do it from across the country. Both of us have audio interfaces connected to our laptops / computers and mics hooked up to those interfaces, and that's how we record. Mike, is there anything else editing? You do all of the audio editing. I am very thankful for that. Give Mike the credit if you like the editing,
or the blame if it's bad. But the other part I think is funny. What's the process if we meet up a little bit beforehand? We can't meet up in person, but we do talk about the topics that we're going to cover before every episode usually, but because this is our 6th season, the extent to which we prepare for each other ahead of time and let each other know what we're going to talk about or what we've prepped has gone down dramatically, right, Sam? Like, we used to have a whole outline. We used to share it with each other and have sort of notes and have plans. And then over time,
notes, and you still have notes.
Yes, but they're my notes now and your notes. We don't really share anything with each other ahead of time. At the very least, we trust each other to be able to respond in real time before hearing something for the first time on the podcast. In fact, I would say that I try not to tell you the stuff that I'm going to bring up in most cases now compared to before, because I like the reactions to be a little bit more natural, a little less prepared. So I think everyone's changed.
Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have had that experience with podcasts where you could just tell if it sounds too scripted, and it hurts the content a little bit, I think, if everyone is aware of what's going on all the time. So, obviously we want to be on the same page of like the general topics that we want to hit throughout a week. But like if we're doing a fun segment or something, or if we're bringing up like specific types of stats or whatever, fun facts, we don't want each other to know, because then it's not as much fun for us or for the listener, I think. So the kind of the way we do it now is we both have our own separate outlines of notes, and then we share with each other like the absolutely essential information that we need to
bullet points,
but otherwise but it's just bullet points. That's all it is.
Yep. And then we just shoot off of that, and a long enough time we've developed trust with each other over a long enough period of time that we can go into a podcast, say, here's the 5 bullet points, this will be over an hour. And sometimes we start an episode and I'm like, I don't know how we're going to get to an hour. And then we're like 90 minutes in still talking. So you never know we also allow the conversation to go wherever it needs to go, which is advice for anyone that's starting a podcast. If you do have an outline, let it meander, but don't record for 2 hours. Try to cut it off at the very least 90 minutes. That's my advice.
There's some people out there, man, who are into 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour podcasts.
Without a doubt.
There's what I guess my advice would be, there's an audience for everything.
That's true.
Don't shoot maybe too broad, because the mistake that a lot of people make is think like, if we had started an NBA podcast, we would have been dead in the water. But there's a niche out there for everything, and find your niche. Maybe you can capitalize on that. Is that it for us?
And JP, I've said this to other people who have asked this in the past. if you have really specific questions about editing and software, presets, EQs, stuff like that, I am available. Just feel free to message me wherever you have it. If you don't have any ability of, if you don't have a social media account to contact us on, just text this number or something, and I'll help you out with any questions that you have. Or help
maybe
you set up.
JP is a 13-year-old in the state of Florida. Then he would literally be banned from accessing social media to send you a message. If that's the case, JP, you can always find me via carrier pigeon.
Is it Jonte Porter? Is that who this is? He's like, I have
is
I have to change my career.
JP?
I got to start a podcast now. I'm not going to be in the NBA. Well, I will say, hey, there's a lot of gambling ads from podcasts now, so good luck, Jonte Porter. Okay,
really
everyone, ethicalhoops.com. Please check it out. Remember, you're supporting us. If you're mad at the Suns, you're supporting us, not the Suns, if you buy any merchandise there. And we're here.
Designs are pretty
win or
cool.
lose. Yeah.
Tie-dye is pretty fucking dope. There's
is cool.
tie-dye shirts. There's hoodies. There's youth shirts now. You just put that up, right? Because
Yes,
someone
there's
asked
women
for it.
like crop tops, which don't
Women's
necessarily
crop
have
tops
to be for women.
or men's crop tops.
Yeah.
I don't judge.
Crop tops are in, man. Men can wear them.
There's hats, normal baseball caps. There's bucket hats. There's mugs. Anything you can find. Not anything, but within reason.
Those things.
Check out ethicalhoops.com. All of
Yeah.
the things that I just listed.
Yeah, ethicalhoops.com. If you want to join us on Patreon, patreon.com/thetimeline. We appreciate all of you, especially those who listen after losses like this. You guys are the best. And we'll be back with a midweek episode as we always do. Hopefully after 2 wins.
After
and hopefully
a
not after 2 losses.
After the Druminating performance of a lifetime against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. See us there. Should be fun.
Thanks, everyone.